We are finally here, the battle of the concealers, the concealer comparison video. Buckle in, it's gonna be a long one. It's gonna be a lot of info. Hopefully I'm able to shed some information and some light on these products for you. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new, then welcome. My name is Christina, and on my channel we talk all things beauty from my own experiences. So before you go, make sure to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and leave any comments that you have for me down below. We have all the concealers that we will be comparing. It feels like all the brands got together and they plotted against us and said, hey, let's all come out with concealers at the same dang time and just let everyone run wild and give everyone all the information and all the specs and what have you. To say the least, I was pretty overwhelmed with the amount of concealers that were coming out because one, they're from brands that I absolutely adore, and two, I wanted to be able to give very thorough wear tests and reviews and everything, and it's kind of hard to do when you have multiple concealers launching in the same week or within like the same month. Hopefully this video will be able to shed some light for you guys instead of just jumping around from video to video. I will say right off the bat, to preface, I like all of these concealers. Every one of these concealers have really great qualities to them, and I think every single one of these concealers will work for different types of people. So I have it by shades, skincare ingredients, textures, coverage, finish, and longevity, and who I would recommend each concealer for. And at the very end, I'm going to be sharing some of my overall favorites for specific things. I'm already sweating because I'm kind of nervous. I'm hoping that I get all the info that you guys may want and all the info that you guys have been asking for. So without further ado, if you are interested in knowing more about the Makeup by Mario, Tower 28, Haus Labs, Live Tinted, and Kulfi concealers and how they all compare, let's get started. So first off, let's talk about each concealer claim. This is a 1 to 2 sentence thing on Sephora or their website about what they claim to do, their big features and everything. Let's start with Makeup by Mario. This one is $29, and this claims to lift, blur, and brighten the under eyes and the rest of the face. I have this in the shade 280. I did also have it in the shade 320, but I ended up returning that one and sticking with 280 exclusively. This one does tend to be a little bit brighter on me, but it's probably the best shade match, honestly. Tower 28, I have 2 of these. They did send this to me to try out before the launch, and I have the shades OC and MDR. These retail for $22. They are the most inexpensive of the bunch that I'm going to be talking about today, and these are meant to be hydrating. They're non-comedogenic serum-like textures, and these are medium buildable coverage as well. Live Tinted concealer right here. This one is $26. It says it's lightweight hydrating with skincare to fade hyperpigmentation and discoloration over time. And I have the shade number 16 in this concealer. The Kulfi concealer, this is the newest one of the bunch that I have tried personally. This retails for $26, so same as the Live Tinted one. Claims to be crease-proof, self-setting, and a hydrating concealer, and I have the shade Mango Drop. I love that name because I love mangoes. And lastly of the bunch, we have the Haus Labs concealer. Now I do have a dedicated review video on this one, but I did end up returning those shades that I previously bought, and I purchased number 31 medium neutral. This one retails for $32. This is the most expensive one of the bunch, and it says it's long wearing, lightweight, non-comedogenic, and it blurs, depuffs, brightens, and has skincare ingredients in it as well that are supposed to help the skin over time. So if price point is important to you, this is how those stack up. Now moving on to the different shades. And just so you guys know, my preferred concealer, I do like to match my concealer to my skin tone so I can use it for spot concealing as well as diminishing the under eye like darkness. I don't necessarily need brightness per se, like that's not as important to me as finding something that will cover up my acne scars, my hyperpigmentation, and that darkness. As long as it's even, then I'm good to go. That's typically my approach when it comes to concealers. I do have some specific concealers that I use for brightening, but for all of these concealers, I try to pick true to my skin tone. And also I do want to note that my face is lighter than the rest of my body. So when I'm looking for a perfect match, I mean something that will perfectly match my body and my foundations. I try to get my foundations to match my body. If I want to go no foundation and spot conceal, I will go a little bit darker than my normal skin tone on my face and blend it all over my face so that it matches my body and it gets rid of my hyperpigmentation and dark circles. I hope that makes sense. Makeup by Mario has 22 shades. I am the shade 280, like I mentioned, and I feel like they have a pretty solid shade range. I feel like Makeup by Mario's shade ranges are always really nice. They do tend to veer more towards warm, if I'm remembering this correctly. I feel like a lot of people do say that his shades do tend to run a little bit warm, but for me, I am a neutral to warm undertone, so either one works well for me. This, like I mentioned, is a little bit lighter than what I normally would go for when it comes to spot concealing, but it's really nice under the eyes. Tower 28 has 20 shades, and again, I am the shade MDR and OC, which are number 9 and number 11. Their shade range is pretty good. I feel like there are a lot of fair toned shades that are available, and maybe a mid-range of medium and a mid-range of deep ones. Because I have number 9 and 11, I thought maybe for my perfect match, number 10 would be my perfect. But whenever I went into Sephora recently, I did swatch number 10, and that one, it says it's a medium to tan neutral undertone, but I still felt like it was quite light. So mixing these two actually gives me a really, really good shade match. It's kind of nice to have these two because I can mix the two for spot concealing on my hyperpigmentation and acne scarring, and then I can use MDR under my eyes, and that kind of covers both of them for me. Next up, we have Live Tinted. This one comes in 20 different shades, and this, again, I am in shade number 16, and actually I think that this is an incredible shade match. They have a good shade range, but within the shade range, I feel like it caters very well to those that have more brown in their skin tone. If you have more brown skin, I feel like even the cool and neutral tones within this would still suit you. They wouldn't look gray, or they wouldn't give you like a white cast or anything. This, from what I've seen, looks incredible on everybody that tries it out. When it comes to the shade range, I feel like no one looks chalky or anything like that, but none of them look orange either. Next is Kulfi. They have 21 shades, and this one, again, I am in the shade Mango Drop. It is described as a medium tan with neutral undertones. The photos, though, I would say for the model, she looks a bit more tan than I am, but it still works for me. I can actually use this as spot concealing as well as under my eyes. I think it works perfectly. I can't really sculpt right here like I do. I usually sculpt out my lower cheeks, but I'm not able to do that because it is such a good match, but that's okay. I would trade that for a perfect skin match any day, and I can use this as spot conceal also if I don't want to wear foundation. Similarly to the Live Tinted one, I feel like the shades in this match brown skin very well. Even though they do have cool tones in them, they're not super stark and very, very cool, you know? Like, I still feel like they would work for you if you are fairer, but you do still have some brown in your skin. I feel like they have a lot of lighter colors, though, I will say. A good range of tan deep shades, but not really like medium. I don't know, I could be wrong because I found a really, really good shade match for myself, and I do find myself being in the medium category. Next up, we have Haus Labs, and Haus Labs has 31 shades, so the largest shade range of the bunch. And again, I'm shade number 31. This is so hard to shade match, I will be honest with you. They do have a graphic, which I thought would be very, very helpful for me since I do have a perfect shade of the foundation, but the recommended shades for me were just way too light. So I ended up going into the store and swatching them, but this actually is a great match. It's slightly darker than my natural skin tone on my face. I like using this for spot concealing as well as my under eyes. I can use this under my foundation as well as on top of my foundation. I think they have the best shade range, and not only because they have more shades, but it feels a little bit more inclusive when I'm looking at the shades. It seems to cover the cools, the warms, the neutrals like perfectly. I think you definitely can find a perfect match. However, you might have to go into the stores to test them out. In terms of the number of shades, this is how each concealer stacks up. For me, my best shade matches as far as my actual skin tone and spot concealing would be Kulfi and Haus. But in terms of shades, if I'm going for brightening, Live Tinted and Tower 28 in the shade MDR are the best ones for brightening my under eyes and also sculpting right here. Okay, next up is skincare ingredients. I know this isn't necessary for a lot of people. I know a lot of people do not depend on their concealers to get their skincare benefits. However, I thought this would be interesting to include because it seems like every concealer does have skincare ingredients nowadays. Now, we don't know how much is in them. It's not disclosed, but I thought it would be helpful or beneficial information for you in case that's something that you tend to like within your concealers. Makeup by Mario, we have caffeine, which helps to depuff and brighten, and fermented marine microorganisms to smooth the skin with collagen-like stimulation. Next up, we have Tower 28, which has hyaluronic acid for hydration and Centella asiatica leaf extract to soothe and calm the skin. And I think it's important to note that Tower 28 is very much geared towards sensitive skin and helping to make sure that the skin is not irritated or angry. And they also have lysine, which supports the production of collagen. Now, Live Tinted has niacinamide, which is to brighten and boost the skin hydration, hyaluronic acid, which is also for hydration, bakuchi oil to firm the skin, and caffeine to brighten and depuff the skin. Next is Kulfi, and the first ingredient is amla fruit extract, which has a lot of beneficial antioxidants. It acts similarly to vitamin C, but it's supposed to be a lot more potent than vitamin C. Saffron flower extract, which hydrates and smooths the skin, and rose hip as well, which is another hydrator. And lastly, Haus Labs, we have niacinamide for brightening and boosting the skin hydration, fermented arnica, which is also within their foundation. This is supposed to reduce the look of redness and irritation in the skin over time. And we have hyaluronic acid to plump and hydrate the skin as well. So in terms of skincare ingredients, this is how each concealer stacks up to one another. As you can see, Live Tinted has the most claims of skincare ingredients within them. I can't really see any of these making a giant impact on my skincare because I don't feel like I would use it every single day. Now we're getting into the topics that took me the longest. This is why it took me so long to come out with this video, because it took a lot of testing and playing with and wearing to actually come up with my thoughts. So let's talk texture. The Makeup by Mario texture, I think it says it's a liquid, but for me, I feel like it's a hybrid of a serum and a liquid. It's a very, very, very thin liquid concealer that has great pigmentation within it, but I also feel like it's a little bit serumy because it is so thin, and it does have a little bit of a slip to it. Now, the texture of the Tower 28 concealers, this is through and through a serum concealer. The texture is very much skincare meets pigment. It is very, like, it blends out like a serum, very, very gel-like almost, and it has good pigmentation. Just because it has that serum feel to it doesn't mean that it's a sheer concealer. Live Tinted, this one is interesting to me. This claims to be a creamy texture, but for me, I feel like this is somewhere between a cream and a serum. It is very lightweight. It feels very like thin and almost gel-like, but it still has a creamy aspect to it, especially when you blend it out and you really see the pigmentation and everything. It blends like a cream, but initially it feels like a serum. So for me, I'm gonna stick it right in the middle of serumy and creamy. Kulfi is a cream texture, and I think that's what they claim to be, and that is my experience with it. I feel like it's a very nice, creamy, buildable texture, and I think that it's still very much blendable. And Haus Labs is the creamiest. I feel like it is the most cream-like. It's almost moussey, like a dry, moussey cream. Does that make sense? I think that this one of the bunch is definitely going to be the one that feels the thickest, but I still think that it has really good blendability to it. All right, now coverage. I'm going to talk about the claim of the coverage from each brand, and then I'm going to talk about my experience with the coverage based on what I have used or how I've used it and how it wears on me. And if you guys don't know this, I do have combination skin. I think I'm normal to oily skin type, so I start off pretty normal. Throughout the day, it gets a little bit more oily, especially in my T-zone and on my cheeks. So that's where I stand. So coverage, of course, is going to vary based on skin type and the way that your skin reacts throughout the day as you wear it. So coverage on the Makeup by Mario one, this one claims to be a medium coverage, and I have to agree with that. I do feel like this is a solid medium. It can kind of veer towards light coverage, and what I mean by that is when you initially apply this concealer, it does look like a very solid medium consistency. You put everything, all the concealer on, and it looks like a great medium coverage. However, if you are the type that likes cream products like cream blush, cream bronzer, liquid blush, liquid bronzer, those types of things, which I am one of those people, it does end up kind of becoming more of a light coverage. Or I'm sorry, I would say light medium coverage. I do lose a little bit of that pigmentation where that concealer was sitting before. So I do end up seeing a little bit more of my freckling and my acne scarring if I put cream blush on top. But if you are a powder type of person, you like powder blush, powder bronzer, you don't mess with any creams or anything, you would probably be able to preserve the medium coverage on this. Tower 28 coverage, it does claim to be a medium coverage, but I feel like this is a medium to full buildable coverage. I think I can definitely get really, really great full coverage with this, like a solid full, and I can build it up on top of itself, and it does not ever look cakey to me. I feel like because of that serum consistency and the very high pigmentation in this, you can really like stack it on top and layer it on top of itself to get amazing coverage. Lift Tinted Concealers, this says it's medium to full coverage, and for me, this is more of a true medium. I feel like I could possibly get full coverage with it, but in the way that I like to wear it and the way that I layer it and everything, because the shade is slightly brighter on my skin, if I do tend to layer it on top of my spots and my hyperpigmentation, it does kind of become more obvious that I'm wearing a lighter concealer on top of, like, you know, a pimple or something like that. So based on the shade of this, I would say this is a solid medium coverage for me. I think it's really, really spectacular under the eyes. I feel like it gives me just the right amount of brightness without looking too stark, you know, and it works, it still works for my spots and stuff. And I'm able to slightly contour down here on my cheeks as well because that color is really great. Kulfi also claims to be a medium coverage, and for me, I would say this is a medium to full buildable coverage. I do feel like I'm able to get that full coverage if I layer it on top of itself. Like I mentioned before, this specific shade on me is a really great match for spot concealing as well as right under the eyes. So I'm able to build it on to itself without having to worry about it looking obviously too light or obviously too dark. Lastly, we have Haus Labs. Again, this does claim to be a medium coverage. It seems like all of them say they're medium coverage. Maybe that's like the safe bet, or maybe that's just like the thing right now to have medium coverage as a concealer. This is medium coverage, but for me, I would say medium to full, veering on full. I think the texture of this especially helps with that coverage. Being more of a creamy type, it seems to hold the pigmentation really, really well. Whenever you're blending it out, it seems to just like stay where you keep it, you know, like as far as pigmentation. It does blend really nicely, but the pigmentation doesn't really disappear as you blend it in. All right, and as far as where they stack up to each other, here is where they stack up in terms of coverage. As you can see, Makeup by Mario and Live Tinted are kind of like more in the mid section of coverage, while Tower 28, Kulfi, and Haus Labs are more towards the full. All of them range within the medium coverage. All right, now finish. We have Makeup by Mario. This one claims to be a natural finish. I do agree with that. I feel like the finish of this is very much the same as the foundation. This one I would say is a little bit more serum-y than the foundation, but still very much skin-like. If you like more of your foundation looks like skincare, this will give you that look. Very much natural, very beautiful. Tower 28 claims to be natural. In my opinion, I would say that this is more radiant when you first put it on, as well as it wears throughout the day. I think it does look more radiant. I do want to note though, in terms of the finish of this, it does tend to seep into my under eyes and crease in my nose, like crevice right here, throughout the day. So that's something to note. Live Tinted claims to be a radiant finish, but I'm a little bit torn on this one. I feel like yes, it is radiant, but also you could kind of make it look a little matte. Like if you were to blend it, really blend into the skin and sheer it out, it could almost look like a natural skin finish with a hint of radiance. I think maybe the skincare ingredients in this have something to do with that finish there, but yeah, it says it's radiant. I would say yes, but it's not the most radiant of the bunch, you know? Kulfi also claims to be radiant, and I feel like this one is kind of a natural skin-like radiance, you know? Like it doesn't add any extra dew. It doesn't look like you have highlighter on or anything like that, but it also doesn't dry down as a matte. I think that this legit looks like my skin when I have really good skincare on. Haus says it's a natural skin finish, and I do agree with that, but also in my opinion, it's more of a natural matte finish. Like I feel like as I blend this into the skin, it looks just like skin. Like it legit just looks like normal, not too greasy, not too matte type of skin. Like this is probably the most undetectable when it comes to finish. So in terms of finish, this is where each one lies based on my opinion. They have their claims and then my experiences, and this is based on my experiences with them. Okay, going into longevity and wear, this is how each concealer wears on me and each specific wear test. I made sure to do a wear test for each one and just jot down some notes on how it did. And I did use every single one of these with my usual makeup routine. And I also did some spot concealing tests as well without foundation. But primer, foundation, concealer, I do setting powder as well as loose powder. And that's what I would consider my usual makeup routine. And then like, you know, my blush and all that stuff. So keep that in mind. I do set my entire face with powder. So the first one, Makeup by Mario, I did a 6-hour wear test and I had a lot of creasing around the nose and the eyes. Those are my problem areas. We're going to talk a lot about those areas within this wear test portion of it. It claims it's self-setting and crease-proof, but for me, it absolutely wasn't. It definitely creased throughout the day, even though I set it. I can tend to have a little bit of like little bumpies right here, like textured areas. I've used different powders with each of these concealers. So I've used this concealer with my Huda Beauty powder. I've used it with my Haus powder. I've used it with the Fenty Beauty Invisimatte powder and the Kosas powder. And with all of those, I experienced some creasing. It does kind of look a little textured and bumpy right here whenever I wear this. So if you have any sort of texture like that, just be warned, this may be emphasized at the end of the day. Initially, when I first put it on, it looked pretty good, but I kind of felt like it didn't set down very nicely with powder. But alone, it looks really great. It did fade at the end of the day. After 6 hours, it did slightly fade under my eyes. Not the longest wearing for me. Okay, Tower 28. I did a 5-hour wear test on this one, and I had significant creasing under the eyes and around the nose, especially around the nose. I feel like this concealer looked the most cakey there. It was in my deep set like wrinkle right here, my deep set crease under my eye. I kind of expected it, honestly, because this is so serum-y. It's so like, it has so much hydration to it. Since I am more oily, it did definitely break up and separate around my problem areas. It slightly faded like on my hyperpigmentation and acne scarring, but it really was not more intense than any other concealer that I've used, you know? As far as my problem areas where it's most noticeable when a concealer breaks up, I did have the most issues with this one. Now, if you do have normal to extra dry skin, I don't foresee you having the same sort of experience as I did. But if you do have oily skin, I would definitely recommend to set it down with a really, really good powder because this is so serum-y and dewy. You want to make sure that you're very strategic in how you place your powders because it can end up just like sucking up the powder and looking a little cakey in some areas. Live Tinted, I did a 7-hour wear test on this one. I had minimal creasing, but I did see a slight bit of creasing with this, and I ended up losing some coverage under the eyes. It didn't look separated or anything. It almost kind of just like faded. You know what I mean? So right in this area at the end of the day, I felt like it did just end up looking darker than I initially looked whenever I first put my makeup on. I feel like this had the most natural effect of like wearing off, you know? Kulfi, I did a 7-hour wear test again, and oh my gosh, I didn't experience any creasing and no breaking up. I didn't have any creasing in this deep set line right here, and I didn't have any breakup right here around my nose. I was actually very pleasantly surprised by that. I expected at least a little bit of like breakup here, but I didn't see anything unless it faded, but it didn't even look faded. It really did look like it stayed on the face. I would say this is crease proof, definitely crease proof. Self-setting, I could see it being self-setting, but I didn't try it. To be honest, I didn't try not setting it yet. Maybe I will because I know it does so well with powder. Maybe I'll try it out without powder and see how it does. But as far as like my usual routine with setting it down, it did incredible. And then lastly, Haus Labs, I did a 7-hour wear test of this one as well. I had very, very, very minimal creasing. Like this one creased the least. I was so shocked by this. Like I would say this is self-setting and it's crease proof, most definitely. I had slight separation around the nose, but under the eyes, it looked immaculate. I was just like thoroughly impressed by the fact that it looked fresh under my eyes whenever I wore this. It looked great. So this is where each concealer stacks up in terms of longevity and wear. This is kind of how long they lasted. Now, granted, the Tire 28 one I only tested for 5 hours. That was my actual wear test, but I had worn this concealer a couple times. Like I'm pretty sure I've worn it for like 7-ish hours. Those are the significant wear times for me. Who I would recommend each concealer to. Like I said, I think that every concealer here is a great choice, but they're not all made for every single person. Makeup by Mario, I would consider recommending it to someone that has more dry under eyes as well as just overall dry skin. I feel like the more liquidy, serum-y texture would be very beneficial, and also only if you need slight hyperpigmentation coverage and slight coverage under the eyes. And it's great if you want a concealer that feels super lightweight and won't feel drying on the skin and also just won't look cakey. Tire 28, I would definitely recommend this one over all the other ones for sensitive skin. If you tend to get irritated skin, you have a lot of irritation when it comes to makeup, this would be a great option for you because they are meant for sensitive skin. If you have sensitive skin, if you have extra dry skin to normal skin, I would recommend it. But if you are an oily person and you want to use this concealer, I would highly recommend that you use a powder with it. And if you're okay with that, then I still feel like this would give you such a nice, dewy, radiant type of look if that's the type of look that you go for with your makeup. Okay, Live Tinted. I would recommend this to you if you tend to have brown in your skin, if you find that concealers can be a little bit chalky or a little bit too white. Consider looking at the Live Tinted ones. Like I said, their shade range is incredible for those that have more brown in their skin. And if you're looking for something that has the duality of skincare as well as makeup, this obviously would be a great option because they have all of those things in them. And also, if you tend to have very, very creasy under eyes and you want something that won't settle in those creases and something that won't emphasize it and something that will just very nicely fade throughout a long day, this is your concealer for sure. This I feel like would wear so incredibly if you tend to have a lot of texture on your face as well as your under eyes, you know? So I think this would be a great option for anyone that's struggling with that. Okay, Kulfi, I would definitely suggest if you want something that looks like skin, very natural matte skin-like finish. And if you need a concealer to wear all day, but you still want it to look like natural skin. So for instance, the Huda Beauty one is super long wear, full coverage and everything, but it can definitely look very, very matte. If you want something that's a little bit more radiant than that, a little bit more, like I said, natural skin-like, but still has the same sort of longevity, Kulfi is your concealer for sure. And if you have a lot of creasing, like I said, under the eye, eyes as well as around the nose, or just a lot of texture on your face. Again, I think this is really, really great for that. It's not going to sink into any of that texture, those fine lines, or emphasize any of it as well. I feel like this would be good for all skin types, from extra dry to oily skin. I can see this working for everyone. Haus Labs, I feel like is probably the most universal, to be honest. I think it's great if you have texture on your skin, if you have very creasy under eyes and you want something that is not going to sink into those creases. It almost like plumps up those areas because it's so creamy. If you have oily skin, I think this is great. I don't really know about extra dry skin, but I feel like it would still work because it still seems to be a natural finish, you know? If you want a natural matte finish that is going to wear all day, I think this is a really, really great option. And if you want something as a spot concealer, because the shade range is so large, I feel like everyone can find a perfect match for however they want to match it to their skin. This would be great if you're just looking for something to act like a spot concealer, especially because of that finish. It is that more natural skin-like finish. Now let's talk my overall concealer recommendations of the bunch. I think the best spot concealer is the Tower 28 one. I feel like this is the best spot concealer because it gives me the fullest coverage without foundation. The Haus Labs one is really great as well, but I feel like this one just looks the most natural on the skin. It's not going to be the most long wearing, but if you want something quickly to just dot onto the skin, blend it out, and make it look like you just have radiant, beautiful skin, there's something about the Tower 28 ones that I'm drawn to, you know? The best ones for under eyes, I would say, are Kulfi and Haus Labs. I just love the way that they are crease proof, and they almost seem to like fill in and plump up those under eye lines that I have, and they look airbrushed. They don't really sink in too much into the crevices of my nose, which is a big one. They don't emphasize texture or anything. They are just so great overall. So if you tend to look for something that does not emphasize texture and something that will work for under your eyes throughout the entire day and not lose coverage or pigmentation, these are your go-tos. Now to cover my most favorite ones, to let you guys know my most favorite, honestly, it's a tie. It is a tie between the Kulfi and Haus Labs one. I can just see myself reaching for both of these equally. I, again, just love the way it airbrushes the skin. I love that it does not emphasize texture on my face. I love the longevity. I love the shade match that I have for both of them. I think that these are the most multi-purpose, and because of that, they are my favorite. I love a good multi-purpose type of product. So these are my absolute favorite ones, followed by the Live Tinted one. I think that this sits so beautifully on the skin. It definitely gives you a skin-like finish, but a little bit of radiance. So I still feel like it gives you a healthy glow while also covering hyperpigmentation, covering up those dark circles, letting your skin look like skin, not looking like actual makeup. And it is kind of a plus that the applicator is this brush applicator. I think that is so luxe and so beautiful. It's just a nice little touch, you know? And I also feel like the shade range on this, because it is more geared towards like those with brown skin, I feel like it just looks the most natural. It's kind of like a lit from within type of glow. I do feel like Tower 28 and Makeup by Mario still have a place within my collection, and they're great for specific needs, but I don't think that they are going to trump these three when it comes to reaching for a concealer and not having to think about how I'm going to use it. Like, these would kind of be like everyday staples for me, something I can just grab, apply, and not have to worry and be strategic about how I do the rest of my makeup. All right, guys, so that was everything for this video. I know it was a ton of information. Hopefully it all made sense for you guys, and hopefully it was helpful. If this does not help you find the one concealer that you want to pick out of all of these, hopefully it at least helps you narrow it down and eliminate some of them from your decision making. So let me know if I missed anything. If you guys have any additional questions for me, leave them in the comments down below. I would be more than happy to answer those for you. And I will be linking every single concealer in my description box, as well as within this video. If you click on the little shopping icon on this video, it will pop up a menu of all of the products, and it'll take you directly to Sephora or Ulta or wherever I have it linked. So that is everything that I can think of for this video. I hope that you guys found it helpful, and I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you did, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this one, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!